Sir Jim Ratcliffe says he would not have tolerated Ed Woodward or Richard Arnold and praises the Glazers as decent people. Man United are the latest club linked with a summer move for Nico Williams as Frenkie de Jong is offered to United. Sancho return is possible but unlikely. United are one of 3 teams going for Victor Osimhen this summer, and Onana is facing a late fitness test ahead of tonight's match against Leicester. All this plus more in today's video as we run through all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video. Let's jump straight into it. So Sir Jim did another interview with the Times Sport yesterday, which was really, really good. Really long, though. It was quite a long kind of report. I'm going to go through some of the kind of key comments that I've picked up from reading the report as well. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's just, there were so many quotes and so many bits as well. I'd encourage you to go and read it if you can, or if you've already read it, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm just going to go through a couple of the interesting kind of quotes that I felt that he mentioned in that particular interview, because he's done obviously a lot of interviews recently, and it's nice, I think, to actually hear from the ownership at United. I don't want to criticize anybody at United for coming out and actually doing interviews that isn't just the manager, because I criticised the Glazers have said nothing for 20 years. Like, I don't even know what their voices sound like. I genuinely couldn't tell you what they sound like. But yeah, I could pick up what Sir Jim, like I could listen to something on the radio and I could say, oh, that's Sir Jim, or that's Omar Barada, because they've already done more interviews than the Glazer family have since they came in. And he had some interesting things to say about the Glazers and stuff. So we'll run through it. So firstly, he said, to be fair, the Glazers, they're really good on the commercial side. There's a shot, good with money. The people who advise me say the fans don't want to hear it. So I've got to be cautious. I get a lot of criticism if I support the Glazers, but the fact is they're really decent people. So he says I shouldn't really talk about the Glazers or praise them, but they're really decent people. So come on, Sir Jim. Yeah, it's never going to go down well. Anybody, I think, with the United fan base, I think if anyone's calling, Glazers are public enemy number 1 in my mind. So anybody that, and they probably are decent people, who knows? We don't know them personally, but they haven't done a decent job at running Manchester United, letting the club rot, and they're ultimately been in charge for our worst ever period, and we've seen nothing but decline after decline after decline with the Glazers. So yeah, it's never going to go down well when you say that they are decent people. He said, they're East Coast, the old East Coast American. They're very polite. They're very civilized. They're the nicest people on the planet. I mean, there isn't a bad bone in Joe Glazer's body. I mean, part of the problem is there isn't a bad bone in his body. So what I was thinking he was kind of suggesting there is that they're nice people. There isn't a bad bone in Joe Glazer's body. And that's potentially a bad thing, because if he had a bad bone in his body, maybe we wouldn't be in the position. Maybe he would have sacked people like Ed Woodward and Richard Arnold and actually done something with the business side if he wasn't such a nice guy. And obviously Sir Jim's going to have to come in and make all these bad decisions. He did mention that as well, saying, look, at the end of the day, I'm now taking the flak and the Glazers are just hiding in America effectively as well, which was an interesting kind of comment from Sir Jim. But he also said, I wouldn't have tolerated Ed Woodward or Richard Arnold. Richard was a rugby man. He didn't even understand football. Ed didn't have the credentials to manage the club. He was a merchant banker, an accountant, and wasn't the chief executive. So he was I kind of picked up from the interview that he was, almost effectively having a dig at the Glazers without having a dig at the Glazers, because he can't. They must have signed, like, he's in business. He's in a business partnership with the Glazers, right? He's probably got a contract that says you can't come out and slag us off and vice versa and stuff. There'll be all these things involved in that. He obviously wants to buy the club in the future as well, and he can't come out and criticize the Glazers, but I think he was indirectly criticizing them by saying he wouldn't have tolerated Ed Woodward and Richard Arnold. And that's ultimately what I think he was saying about the Glazers, saying they're too nice, they weren't prepared to make the right decisions, and gave these people too much control over United, which is effectively where we are. But again, it all goes back to the Glazers, in my opinion. They're in charge of the club. They own the football club. So the decisions by the people below them, whether they give them free reign to do what they want to do, you still need to step up at some point in time when your business is failing to say, hold on, what's going on here? Why are we kind of declining in the league? Why are we spending all this money on players and then selling them a year later when they're no good? Why are we paying all this money? And I tell you why they didn't, because they're making money from the club, and that's all they care about. As he mentioned in the first comment, commercially, they're very good. Yes, of course they are, because it affects their bottom line. And that's my thoughts on on the situation there. But he also said this, which I thought was interesting, regarding recruitment and data analysis, saying we still don't have a data analysis at United. All we've got is Jason Wilcox's eyes, and Jason for me is the guy at the coalface. He ran the academy at Manchester City. Texin Bagaristan, I know, thought Jason had the best eyes at the club. Jason knows what's working, what's not working in terms of how Ruben's playing his system, which players he's picking, and which players we're going to buy in the future. And Jason's got views on all of those things. And when I listen to Jason speak, I get what he's saying, but that's insane, isn't it? In the report, it was saying that United have fallen behind Brighton and Brentford when it comes to data analysis and haven't actually adapted to the modern era. Where this kind of, where the technology's there, the data analysis is there, so you can actually study players and look for, have a better recruitment structure, because you can actually crunch the numbers as well as eyeballing the players. You still need to eyeball the players, but I think that's absolutely insane that United don't have data analysis. And we're still eyeballing players. Has anyone seen the film? Let me know in the comments. Anyone seen the film Moneyball with Brad Pitt? Around the Oakland A's. And if you have, then you'll understand what I'm saying. If you haven't, it's basically where it's about Billy Beane, who is the CEO of the Oakland A's, and all the scouts and recruits and that are saying, "Oh, well, this guy's a good hitter. This guy's a good hitter." When they're looking to recruit players in for their baseball team, and he's like, well, if they're good hitters, why don't they hit good? And goes down a completely different route by getting a data analysis guy in for the recruitment, rather than relying on these old school scouts that were just eyeballing players, and actually turns them into a really good team with a half of the budget or even a third of the budget of some of the teams around them, and nearly wins the series with them. That's the kind of nuts, and that's how I see United, where we've still eyeballing players and not got a data analysis department, which is insane to me. Which is why, one of the reasons why we're buying, players for managers and recommendations from managers and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because we don't have that as well, which has got to change. We've got to be doing better, and hopefully they will do. I think Omar Barada did say in one of his interviews is that they're now looking to recruit and build their own data analysis department, which will be really good going forward. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. And then the final thing I picked up on, he said, if I fail, I will step down. I don't think I'll fail. As soon as we start playing good football and start winning, it will change. Effectively saying that if he backs himself to be able to rebuild United and kind of get things right, but if he doesn't, he'll step down. He did also say about the criticism he was receiving, the criticism the Glazers received. He said if it got to that point, I would probably walk away from United as well. So it was a really fascinating interview. I think he's I like hearing from the ownership, so I'm never going to criticize somebody for doing interviews at United, because it does give you a little bit of an understanding around the situation at United, the financial mess, the mismanagement, and where we've been going wrong. And it's only what probably most fans have been saying anyway. I know I have this conversation a lot with my brother-in-law, my dad and nephew and stuff around the way we've been ran and managed, specifically since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club and David Gill left the club as well. That was the kind of big turning point where the actual kind of real decline started. And again, for me personally, the bucks lies solely at the Glazer family. Yes, you can blame Ed Woodward, and I do blame Ed Woodward and Richard Arnold. Do you know what I mean? But ultimately, it's the Glazer family that employ the people. If you're employing someone and they're failing, then it's still your responsibility to do something about it, in my opinion. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Now let's move on to some Onana news. So Dermot Mee, 22, is set to make his Manchester United debut and start against Leicester City tonight. Andre Onana is ill. Now that came from Sully Says, who's not got the largest following. It was reposted by some other kind of decent sources. Was actually quite reliable with the Amad Diallo injury as well. Now originally came out with that story this morning. And then Samuel Luckhurst has also said, and Samuel Luckhurst gets the team news. He's the one that's leaked all the team news and stuff in the past, although that's kind of quieting down in recent months. But saying Andre Onana faces a late fitness test and as it stands won't be starting for United against Leicester tonight. It also come out though about half an hour later saying Andre Onana is still optimistic He will be fit tonight and intends to travel to Leicester, but United are making contingency plans in case he is declared unfit. So could be a position where Andrew Onana is out alongside Bayinda, who's injured. Tom Heaton's also injured as well. That would be insane to have all three of your first, second and third choice goalkeepers all out for a game. But it is what it is. If they're injured and ill, there's nothing we can kind of do about it as well. And fair play for Dermot Mee if he gets to make his debut as well. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what kind of happens. Obviously, we'll know maybe by the time you're watching this, you might be watching this after the game anyway. But yeah, interesting to kind of see if Onana is going to be available for tonight's game. Let's go through some other transfer news. So one player we've been linked with, I wouldn't say heavily, but there's been a few kind of murmurings, I would say, regarding Paul Pogba potentially coming back. Fabrizio Romano said there's nothing between Manchester United and Paul Pogba. The club is going in a different direction with talented young players such as Patrick Dorgu and Aidan Heaven, saying that United are not going to be bringing in Paul Pogba back. I kind of agree with that decision as well. I don't think we should be going near that kind of deal, especially for his age, is wage that he's probably going to want as well. So, Romano confirmed we're going in a different direction. Young, talented players like Dorgu and Aidan Heaven, who have been, a success so far, although it's obviously early days. They're both still young and learning and adapting and stuff like that as well. But I champion that kind of change in direction. Let's go for younger, hungrier players. And I always I was thinking about this morning, actually, that, Ralph Rangnick, I think, had a lot to say at United, and a lot of it was, I actually kind of think it was quite good. And one of the things, obviously, he said about the open heart surgery and stuff, but one of the other things that he said, which I like the idea of, he said you've got to try and sign players on their second or third contracts, which was a really interesting way to kind of look at football, where effectively what he was saying is if you get players on their second or third contracts, that one, their salary is going to be lower and they're hungrier and more determined to try and get a better and improved contract and stuff going forward as well. And we were always signing players at the end of their careers, at the end of their contracts, where they've kind of already got the big salaries and stuff. And I always think about that, and hopefully we're going to go down that model going forward with the recruitment, because I'd much rather see us buying young developmental players than I would a 32-year-old player that's very, very injury prone on massive wages that's just been banned for effectively 2 years. Would be my personal thoughts on that, but let me know if you disagree or if you agree with that in the comments. Now, another player that potentially might be but won't be coming back is Jadon Sancho. So Chelsea may indeed pay Manchester United compensation to avoid fulfilling their obligation to buy Jadon Sancho, but that is not the intention at this time. Manchester United do not want him back. So that came from Fabrizio Romano. So he was saying, look, there is the... Chelsea could do the pay the compensation to avoid, but he did say that Chelsea do still want to keep Sancho, and United don't want him back as well. So hopefully that remains the case for the rest of the season, and we can finally move on Jadon Sancho in the summer, because I could not be done with another Sancho saga in the summer when we're talking about Jadon Sancho every other day or every day. But yeah, no, thank you very much. So that's positive in my opinion. Now, another player we've been linked with is Nico Williams. So Manchester United are the latest club ready to try a transfer move for Nico Williams this summer. United will likely sell Rashford and Antony this summer, and there are even question marks about Garnacho. That could free up the funds for Man United to go all out for Nico Williams. What are we thinking about that? Now, that came from Court Offside. Court Offside have a lot of, they've got good journalists that work for them as well. They've got some less kind of credible journalists that work for them as well. This, in my opinion, came from one of their less credible journalists. The actual kind of report was saying that United are ready to blow Arsenal and Chelsea out of the water for Nico Williams. And, when it's got United and other teams, it felt a little bit clickbaity to me. Personally, would be an interesting player, though. I wouldn't say, do I think this story is true? No. Do I think that we would be interested in Williams? I don't think so. I think we're going down a different model. Would I take him? Yes, I would take him at United. I think he's a very talented young player, 22 years old, 36 appearances, 9 goals, 7 assists. The question mark about whether we would fit the system or not, but I think he could do that kind of inside 10 position really well on the left, that left kind of 10 position, which we know is an area that maybe we're looking to strengthen as well. Got a release clause of 58 million euros, which is 49 million pounds roughly. It's only on about, well, I say only, he's on £200,000 a week, I think, according to Capology, which is where I normally go to try and find player wages and stuff, which is around £170,000 a week. So would be obviously very expensive in terms of wages, but not quite, I don't think that's crazy for top players. I mean, yes, we want to reduce the wage bill, but I think we're talking about the £300,000 and £350,000 a week contracts, and giving big contracts out to maybe players that haven't proven themselves yet as well. And obviously, Nico Williams is a very talented player, so it's not groundbreaking, but it's still excessive. I think personally, but they're going to go down. That for me feels like a Galactico signing, which is not what United are wanting to do. I would say someone like Nene Dorgelis, for example, that we were linked with from Romano in January, would probably be more realistic than Nico Williams, because he's young, the same age actually. I think they're both 22, but cheaper in terms of cost and wages, but also more developmental. They want to try and find these kind of gems and develop them themselves at United, i.e. go back to our roots, which is buying players, before they become superstars and turning them into superstars. And I like that kind of model. I think that's done us well in the past when we've tried to sign the big name players. It hasn't always worked out for United. So I do think we need to kind of go back to what made us so good in the transfer market. It made us the club that we are ultimately going forward. But let me know in the comments what you think about Nico Williams. Now, another position we're looking to strengthen is the striker. So Crystal Palace's Jean-Philippe Mateta is one of 5 strikers Manchester United have shortlisted for the summer. Victor Osimhen, Benjamin Sesko, Viktor Gyokeres and Liam Delap are also on the list. That came from Team Talk. And I would probably think that those are the 5 main strikers that we've been heavily linked with. We obviously get linked with a lot of players. With Man United, we get some of it will be real, some of it will be clickbait, some of it might just be that we're looking at players or scouting players, because I do think we're obviously looking at a lot of players around the world. So you've got to factor into all of those. But those 5, I would say, are probably the 5 most heavily linked players. Sesko, loads in the past. Obviously, Viktor Gyokeres, we know, with the whole kind of Amorim link. Liam Delap, David Ornstein has kind of confirmed that we've been looking at him amongst others as well. So there's a lot of credibility around Delap. Victor Osimhen, I do think we're interested in, although the kind of stories are a little bit more kind of bitty around Osimhen. And Mateta has been heavily linked with us for the last few weeks as well. And I think that there's kind of, there's merit in all of them. I think that maybe we're looking at ones that if we get Champions League football, so if we win the Europa League football, maybe we will have a bigger budget. So maybe we would then look to use that budget to go for a kind of more kind of like an Osimhen or a Gyokeres, for example, because of those extra funds. And if not, maybe Mateta and Delap are more realistic. That's what I kind of think we're maybe doing, and that's maybe why we're getting linked with two, I don't want to say 2 different profiles, but an expensive striker and a less expensive striker, because of those 2 kind of scenarios. Whereas if we don't get Champions League, maybe Mateta becomes more realistic, or Liam Delap becomes more realistic. If we do get Champions League, then maybe we do have the money to then go for Osimhen, although Osimhen, the problem I don't necessarily think is his release clause, it's his wages. Romano was saying that he wants €10 million net, I think it was, off of memory, which works out roughly £350,000 a week. And as we've just mentioned, I don't think we're going to go anywhere near those sort of salaries going forward as well. But let me know what you think about those 5. I think Mateta and Delap are probably more realistic, but if we do get more money, then maybe Osimhen or Gyokeres, although might become more viable, because Gyokeres apparently wants to Champions League football. So if we did get in the Champions League, maybe he becomes more of a viable target. But we'll just need to wait and see. But I do think we're kind of exploring different scenarios for players at the moment. Now, just on Osimhen, Man United, Arsenal and Juventus will all try to sign Victor Osimhen this summer. His £63 million release clause will have to be triggered to get him. Now, that came from an Italian journalist that was posted by some credible places. I don't know the credibility myself. I am going to say take that with a pinch of salt, because I'd want to see a little bit more credibility. But it's more kind of Italian journalists linking us with potentially a move for Victor Osimhen. That's where a lot of the noise seems to be coming from at the moment. Although Romano has kind of said they would be interested in Osimhen, but it depends on the budget. And the budget does dictate, obviously, what level of striker or what level of player we're going to be going for as well. And then the final story I've got for you is Frenkie de Jong. We've been linked with Frenkie de Jong again. He's becoming the new Wesley Sneijder, isn't he? Where, for those old enough to remember, we got linked with Wesley Sneijder like every year for like 10 consecutive years, I think it was. Probably even longer. He's always a player that was linked with United but never came. Was it Nicolas Guillotin as well? I remember him being linked with us for years as well. And Frenkie de Jong is becoming the new Wesley Sneijder, where we just continuously get linked with him. So Manchester United, along with Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea and Man City, have been offered the chance to sign Frenkie de Jong. The midfielder's contract is set to expire in 2026. That came from Ekram Connor. Ekram Connor's literally linked us with about 50 players in the last couple of weeks. I don't know the credibility myself. He's got a very large following though as well, but I'm yet to be convinced that it's a decent source. So I would say at the moment, take that with a pinch of salt. And again, Frenkie de Jong goes against everything that we're kind of looking to do. I think high wages, high fee. Do you know what I mean? I don't necessarily even think he fits the pro. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but does he fit the profile of what we're looking for in terms of intensity and physicality? I'm not so sure. If Ten Hag was here, I could maybe say, yeah, that might be plausible, because he would have been a player that obviously Ten Hag rated and wanted. But at the moment, I can't see us going anywhere near Wesley Sneijder, aka Frenkie de Jong. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Smash a like on the video on your way up. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.